Welcome to tonight's event. So you've been Dr. MacAskill, the Scottish Government's Justice Secretary. The title of tonight's talk is MacAskill Talks Justice, a discussion with the Justice Secretary. It's fairly self-explanatory and wide ranging, knowing all that he's got some knowledge on the topic. So Mr. MacAskill, some background information first. Mr. MacAskill is a native of Edinburgh. He studied law here at the University. Completed his training at a firm in Glasgow and then set up his own practice as MacAskill. He came to prominence in the SNP through his activities in the 79, which is an organisation, committed to the idea that the SNP should be in favour of Scotland becoming an independent socialist republic. During the 1980s, he led the SNP's Can't Pay, Won't Pay campaign against the introduction of the poll tax. From the creation of the Scottish Parliament in 1999 until 2007, which was the MSP for the Lothians region. In 2000, as a result of some unusually vigilant policing, he was detained in London for the Euro 2000 second-leg playoff match between Scotland and England on suspicion of being drunk and disorderly, but no charges were ever brought. But I imagine the experience was especially galling given that Scotland actually won that match 1-0. In 2004, he supported the joint leadership ticket of Alexander Nicholas Sturgeon, having originally intended to stand for the deputy leadership himself, but standing aside when Salmond reconsidered his decision not to seek re-election to the leader's position. In 2007, he was elected the MSP for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh region, winning the seat from the Scottish Labour Party and becoming the Justice Secretary after the Assembly's victory in that election. One of his first acts as a Cabinet Secretary was to lift the ban on alcohol sales at international rugby union games held at Murrayfield Stadium. I know there's one person in this room who's really pleased with that news. He's also a published author, having written Building a Nation, Post-Evolution Nationalism in Scotland, edited another called Agenda for a New Scotland, Visions of Scotland 2020, and co-authored one with former First Minister Henry McLeish, Global Scots, Voices from Afar, something with a theme on there. So, usual format, Mr. MacAskill's going to speak for a little while before I open the floor for questions, so without further ado, no more building, but thank you very much.
I did actually get in 1981 when John Robertson scored with 1-1-0, but that's in the glory days of Scottish football, but hopefully they're returning. Thank you very much for reminding me. I've not any real prepared script. I live in the style of justice and that tends to preoccupy me, but I think I have to set some things in context. Now, I'll tell you a story. I was up on Friday and doing a night shift for the police up in Inverness. I was getting berated by one particular divisional commander who was going on with problems at bail. Now all these people were getting out and running loose, and then there was a problem with lack of confidence and faith in the justice system that was melting down, and then he went on about the problems of sentencing policy, and it was really dreadful. And then of course he confirmed to me that actually he operated one of the safest parts in one of the safest countries in Europe. I'm still trying to work out what it was he was trying to tell me. How on one hand we have this wonderful idyllic place to stay, which it is, and yet at the same time we have a justice system that's a partly in meltdown. There's a wee bit of Scottish psyche. I always remembers when my travels around doing the Scottish diaspora. I did meet he's now taking out American citizenship, but he's a Scots guy done well. Craig Ferguson, who most folk in Scotland remember as Bing Hitler, but at one stage Craig was having considerable difficulties with drugs and alcohol, but maintaining his position as a really funny comedian, and he thought he'd been doing quite well one night, and coming out of Socky Wall Street or wherever he was performing, and he thought, it's not bad. Feeling okay, and all of a sudden somebody shouted, "Oh, bang!" He said, "Hey, so what is it?" He says, "You're crap, innit?" Well, I never said that, so he was something worse than that, so he walked over and he says, "You really think that?" And he goes, "No, I thought you were really fantastic, but I want to keep your feet in the ground." And of course, each and every one in Scotland can tell you some similar thing, that it's kind of un-Scottish to say thank you to people, they just kind of do it. That actually, we don't say, "Oh, well done, you've graduated, that's a good degree." We kind of say, "Oh, well, that's you getting ears and faces now, or you must have bummed somebody that," rather than, say thank you, job well done. There's something about Scottish psychology, and similar to this officer. Are there problems in Scotland? Yes. Do we have an area of problems in some areas with serious crime? Yes. Some parts of Scotland, a postcode, we have a real problem with serious crime, especially in the west of Scotland. The rest of Scotland's actually a fantastic place to stay in many parts. Where I stay, just down the road here in Edinburgh, it's a great quality of life. I'm not blighted by crime, so we have to get things in perspective. When people write to say there's bits of Scotland like mini Beirut, not really. People die in Beirut, bombs go off. We do have problems. If you live in Postle Park, it's not pleasant. We do have problems in Easter House and places like that. But let's get things in context. What I have to say as well is that, the laws are an important part of Scottish identity. I've never forgotten that it's a great privilege to be a Scottish Justice Minister. We're talking about Scotland, where the 300th year of the Union, the Scottish National Party actually made its breakthrough. Why did it make its breakthrough? Because Scottish identity was retained throughout 300 years of a union. And one of the bases for retaining that identity was a distinctive church, law and education system, and it's something that we haven't forgotten. As a government, we remember the debt that we owe to those who maintain Scottish identity. I do remember my friend Professor Ted Cowan telling me once that to try and broker peace during the American Revolution, it had been suggested to Benjamin Franklin that they should have an incorporating union with George in England, to which Benjamin Franklin said, "Don't be so stupid, you want to be in the same situation as Scotland." And clearly, as I say, America went on to prosper as an independent nation, and we hope as a government that that's where we'll head as well. But we do remember the debt, and part of that is that Scottish society is distinctive. We have a different legal system, that's as it should be. There are matters where we have to have uniformity with south of the border, uniformity elsewhere in Europe to address matters, whether it's people trafficking, addressing the problems with drugs. But there are distinctive matters in Scotland that we should deal with in our own way and in our own nature to suit our own circumstances. So as I say, that's where we're coming from there. But it goes back to what is the situation in Scotland in terms of criminal justice in particular. Well, the system is actually that some areas of Scotland have a real problem with serious organised crime related to drugs and deprivation. Most areas in Scotland don't have any significant criminal justice problem, although many areas are blighted by low-level anti-social behaviour. And actually, when you look at matters in Scotland, there's something quite shameful. I was out doing something about the gang problems in Glasgow, where we're putting in money to change matters. And I never said it to the TV cameras, I should have. I should have said, look around you. This place in the 21st century, in the largest oil producer and gas producer in the European Union, our people live in hovels. They are dirt poor in many instances, surviving on social security benefits. There is no future for the kids there, and we wonder why they turn to smack or alcohol or turn on to other things. That is something that we have to hang our heads in shame. 25% of reported crime in Scotland comes from the city of Glasgow. Before we changed the local authority boundaries in Scotland, there used to be 1,222 council wards. 25% of the Scottish prison population came from 55 of them. You can name them. They were postcoded. There were 35 in Glasgow, something like 12 in Edinburgh, and a few elsewhere. The Easter Houses, the Castle Milks, the Craig Millers, all these places. 50% came from just 155 of the 1,222 places. There are areas in Scotland where nobody is in prison. There are areas in Scotland where, frankly, we have to hang our head in shame at what's happened. I have to say I didn't believe it when I was first told it, but Roger Houchin, an academic, confirmed it to me. I saw the evidence when he did a study on how we were banged up in our prisons on any one night. And what it showed is actually if you come from an area of urban deprivation in Scotland, the Ferguson Parks, you're statistically more likely to be in prison than if you're a black boy living in the Bronx. There's something wrong when poor folk in Scotland are more likely to be incarcerated than poor young black boys in South Chicago, the Bronx, or Watts, or wherever else. But that's the statistics. So to say we have to change that, it's not to justify it. Poverty is not an excuse for crime. The overwhelming majority of people who are poor don't commit crime. They're in fact the victims of crime. People in my area, in the Grange, we don't often become victims of crime except by circumstance or chance, the wrong place, or some padding in soft crime. It's people living in housing schemes who are the victims of crime. That's why we have to tackle crime.